I'll tell you what, these directors, you know, there are dynamic director duos in this industry, but not that many that you can count on. It's literally on your fingertips. But these guys, they literally have been game changers. इनके टाइटल ही सब कुछ बयां करते हैं, जैसे द फैमिली मैन, फर्जी, शोर इन द सिटी, गो गोवा गॉन, स्त्री. They are known for making diverse cinema with eccentric titles. They also had a film called A Gentleman, and trust me, believe me when I say this, that man wasn't gentle. Ladies and gentlemen, can we have the dynamic duo on stage, Raj and DK? Mr. Raj Nidimoru and Mr. Krishna DK. Welcome, sir. So next up, what can I tell you about this man? You know, he's a good human being, and he's a brilliant filmmaker. One of his most, his passion project is one of my favorites. He recently did a series which was remarkable. I don't think anybody in this day and age can make something so authentic, so visually appealing. Ladies and gentlemen, he has too many films to his credits, and everything that he does is so diverse. He's done a film on a superhero called Bhavesh Joshi, which obviously is our street superhero. And films like Udaan, which stir an emotion, which is left lingering on, especially with the audience for years to come. He did a film called Lutera, dealing with complex emotions. Of course, there's Sacred Games, and there is Jubilee. Ladies and gentlemen, this man, and I must say this, he's here to stir a revolution. Maybe that's why his production is called Andolan. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Vikramaditya Motwane. I don't know कि विक्रम ने मेरे चश्मे कॉपी किए कि मैंने उनके. Very looking dapper man. Next up, ladies and gentlemen, I've had the privilege of working with this gentleman, and I must say, you know, he's taught me a lot, and after teaching me also a lot, whenever I ask him something, he says, okay, I'm still learning. And that's one of the reasons that he is where he is today. And this man literally needs no introduction. And we all love his films, whether it's Tumbin, Mulk, Article 15, Ravan, Thappad. Ladies and gentlemen, the one and only Mr. Anubhav Sinha. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, I am also going to be asking Mr. Saurabh Verma. Next come. All right. So, Saurabh says that he's going to take the back seat for this, and he's going to enjoy this session with us. But we do have somebody to moderate. Ladies and gentlemen, before we start this session, I must say there is another gentleman I'm looking forward to seeing here, who I'm going to introduce. And also, he doesn't really need an introduction, so when he comes here, he will be introduced to the galley. So first off, I would like Mr. Mayank Shekhar, film critic and journalist, to moderate this session, please. Welcome on stage, sir. Welcome. Is everyone comfortable? Absolutely. Can we start?
Yes. Absolutely.
Okay. Before you start, sir, there is another gentleman. आप लोगों ने देख ही लिया होगा प्लकार्ड पे कि किनका नाम मैं कहना चाहता था. Mr. Aanand. So as soon as he's here, he's going to join this session. Ladies and gentlemen. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. This is turning into an award show of sorts, with long introductions. Thank you for the introductions, of course. I have to say there's been some error in terms of how long it's going to take for Aanand to come, but a bigger error in terms of scheduling and dates has to be the fact that this is the director's panel, and welcome to the director's panel, but they're all men on this panel. It's a completely male-dominated panel. Obviously, that said, these are the top filmmakers in Bombay, or Bombay films, or Bollywood, or Indian cinema. I know there's a post-lunch session. Everyone's chilling right now, but we could all do with a bigger round of applause, please, before we start the session. Of course, the conversation is going to be about films, cinema as a medium, as an incredible medium, that mixes incredibly the arts in terms of all the arts coming together, science in terms of technology, commerce, which sort of puts it together and sort of also pushes it forward. Science, arts, commerce being something that you could learn in school. These are the streams you would do in high school. And then eventually, of course, lording over this process is the director. We'll look into arts and sciences and commerce through this conversation, but I'm going to ask you, the first question that I want to start this conversation with is, if you were not a director, guys, which aspect or department of filmmaking could you devote your life to? I'm going to start with, by the way, that's Raj and DK. They're two different people. I'm sure you knew that, for the pleasure of one. Starting with you, DK.
Hi, everyone. Hello. So the question is, if I was not a film director...
If you're not a director, but in films, which department of films could you devote your life to?
Very difficult. I mean, it's a difficult choice between being a writer or an editor.
Okay.
But I think these are the first two things we did when we decided we want to make our own films. We first figured out how to write a script, how to tell the story, and then figured out how to edit it, which is another way of saying how to tell the story on screen once it's been shot, and then figured out the rest of it. So yeah, maybe writer or an editor.
Hello. Yeah. That's the problem with two of us. So he stole my answer. But yes, we kind of taught ourselves writing, editing, sound. Put us in any department, we can do it, hopefully. That's how we knew how to make films. We never knew that we'd be working with studios and all that. So we just wanted to be a self-sufficient, direct unit that we could do most of it. And lately, DK is acting, of course. So I would now.
See, I would have loved to be an actor, but I just wish I was better at it.
You're basically a failed actor who became a director, like so many people I know.
No, I became a director so I could cast myself.
How about you, Anubhav?
Yeah, it's a similar answer actually. I was an engineer, and I became a director, and then it was out of no choice that I had to start writing. And it's been like 30-ish years that I've been writing, and now I enjoy it a lot. So if I was not directing, one, I'll be half dead. But the other half, which remains alive, will probably write.
And you're a producer, that you already are, right? I mean, that's...
Don't go there.
Don't go there. Why is that?
I don't want to open certain doors where this conversation will go elsewhere. No, I would not produce if I was not a director. Producing has become a rather inconvenient business, producing. So financing and producing are two different things which most people don't get. But producing has become a very inconvenient business. So no, I wouldn't produce.
Vikram?
I would probably, if it's right at the top of the career before I became a director, I would say cinematographer. Because I love photography, and so I think, I would have, and I think there was a moment when I was in AD, I was still considering whether I should go into cinematography and be that, but then I chose to be a director. So yeah, if it was back to stage one, but if I had to choose today, I would probably say editor.
Editor?
Yeah.
So, I mean, because you said we should not go there, we'll definitely go there. All of you are also producers.
Maybe that was a subtle invitation.
Yeah, I know. You shouldn't have said that. Now, given that all of you, while you're directors, you're also producers in your own right, do you think it's essential in some form or the other to own your work, to sort of have a final cut, to be a producer when you're a director?
He,
Do you guys have-
Anubhav,
Okay, no,
Anubhav
this
has,
is
Anubhav has an
Anubhav's
opinion.
favorite
Anubhav has his
topic.
cut.
We're going to speak on behalf of Anubhav, so we're going to
Yeah,
exempt
it's his
him from
favorite
this
topic.
question.
We had a pre-game inside where we were going to discuss.
Go for it.
No, we must ideally. See, we're all, in our own
Right.
right.
And
but-
it's not a coincidence.
Yeah, and yeah, looks like it. You just that's our commonality, I guess,
Right.
is that we were all independent filmmakers in that sense. That you have to put everything together, be the producer too. That's where I think I can say for all of us that we became producers to make our films and make it right and make it the way we want it. So that means that you write it, you conceptualize it, create it, all the way through. You direct it, whatever you want to call it. We used to call ourselves filmmakers, not even directors. My first business card was filmmaker because it was everything. So you need to ideally produce it and have the final say also. All the way up to marketing, posters, trailers is what any filmmaker would want, because it's somebody else is coming and saying, I see the film like this now.
Anand, I'll rise here. Guys, give him a big hand. Not a problem. To bring Aanand up to speed with what we're talking about, we're essentially talking about, which actually goes right up your alley, in the sense of how important is it for a director to also be a producer. In fact, you're as prolific a producer, if not more prolific as a producer, than even a director. How important is it to own your work, to have a final say, to have a final cut, as they say, when it comes to films, for a director to also be a producer? Is it essential?
So Mayank, first of all, becoming a producer is not by choice.
Okay,
Because I
nobody
wanted
wants to be a producer. Basically, we've established.
It's like for a director, you want to own your film. You want to be responsible for every penny spent because it's your vision, your world, and you want to be at stake 100%. You don't want anybody to lose money on your film. So better get onto the board and be part of it. Go ahead and play your game on your own terms. Your loss, your gain. So production house happened to me because of that. अपनी फिल्में बनाऊंगा, अपने तरीके से बनाऊंगा, अपनी दुनिया में जाऊंगा. And that was one reason that made me a producer. And then I realized that अगर ये हो ही गया है, if this is happening, why not to use this for other directors like me? Why not to give this path? They will have their own struggle, but I can just minimize their journey towards their goal. So that was one reason that made me producer.
What about writer? How important is it for you to own your work in terms of being the writer? I mean, at some level, every director is also directing the writing, of course, but to have the ideas from scratch coming from you. Vikram?
So it's not, I think directors are involved in the writing process. And so from my personal experience, I feel that sometimes having a little bit of objectivity of the writing helps you in looking at the material in a far more objective way. You can make the changes. I think as a writer, there's a tendency for me personally to get very subjective and then
Get too involved?
Yeah, then it's the writer fighting the director. Like writer says, oh, I want this scene. Director's like, you don't need the scene. And then the last thing I want is a sort of conversation in my head. So, but yes, a director has to be involved in the writing, whether it's to be objective, whether it's subjective. You have to own the film. At some point in time, you have to sort of like, you have to bleed for this film. You have to sort of like drop some blood and some skin and some spit. And you only do that if you're very, very invested in the film. And that investment only comes when you're a part of the actual creative process, which is the writing process. Correct. So whether you're a helicopter or whether you're the actual driver of the car or whatever, but there needs to be some skin in the game in the writing process. And I think, and it's very fluid. I don't think there's any rules to that. Right. But that's my personal thing. And I know Raj and DK are both writers.
I mean, Raj and DK are both writers who became filmmakers from being engineers first. Anubhav Sinha became a filmmaker from being an engineer first. Aanand L. Rai became a filmmaker, being an engineer first. You're the only exception here. Guys, what's up? Like, what is the connection between engineering and filmmaking, really?
Well,
and this is the
I
one
might
time
have been an engineer. My
you could have
father
been an
was-
engineer. Yeah, there you go.
We need to rag him now. We need to rag him.
He looks
You're
like
a
an engineer.
facha. What is, I mean, I know one thing that's common. One thing that's common, at least I can say for this particular panel, is that there are no women in engineering class. And there are not that many female directors. There really aren't. Even if, that hasn't changed in all these years, has it? In terms of the representation of women among directors at least, or in the crew, they may have?
It has marginally increased,
Okay.
and which is a good sign, and hope to get better.
I think the number of women directors has. I mean, compared to when we were like starting up in the beginning, I think definitely there's been an increase in women directors. I've also, in my experience, from my first film to the last thing I've made, the number of HODs on my crew who are actually female have grown pretty exponentially. In the beginning, so Jubilee or even the last film I've done, Control, my production designer, my editor, costume designer, my first AD, all women, and it's not a quota thing. It's just like because.
But I'm just wondering. Also, it doesn't even need to be just female. I mean, it could be any gender. It could be caste. It could be religion. When you are recruiting, is that something that you have in mind? That diversity in your crew, is that something that you even think of? Or making a film is hard enough? That's not the area. That's not your top concern or your concern at all, because it's just hard enough to put this up on the screen.
I do actually, but I cannot explain how I formulate it. But I make a
You're conscious of it.
very conscious effort, instructions to the people recruiting their teams. So yeah, there is an interesting representation of everyone, but it's not very neat to
Sure.
elaborate how.
Right. Answer?
No, for me, it is never. I love my industry for one reason, that it never comes to your mind. Caste, gender, anything. It's purely talent and how much HOD or a technician can give to your film. That's important more than the gender and the caste.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, speaking of diversity, I think the way I understand the question is, do we look for diversity or do you let it naturally happen, right? See, I think for us at least, when we write characters, when we write our stories, we actually look for diversity in it, right? We want to create strong female characters, or if depending on the story itself, have diversity in the kind of regions represented as well, not just in the gender. So we look for diversity when we write. That automatically leads to diversity in casting. Beyond that, I think when you go to hire the technical crew, I think most of us, we tend to pick the people that suits the project best. So beyond that, at this point, see, if you're looking for a DOP, it's just the reality that probably 1 in 10 is a woman, and they're outnumbered 9:1 in that sense. But when it comes to production designers, there are more women. When it comes to costume designers, there are probably way more women than men. So
maybe editors also, right? Way more editors who are female.
yeah. So certain jobs, but yeah, it's a matter of that catching up. And I think, yeah, in that case, we would probably look to get whoever is best suited for this kind of a film. But when it comes to writing, we are very, very conscious to have a female writer on our team. And of course, our writing room is full of a lot of young women, so that we get the perspective of the women also. So it doesn't become like if I may use the word, a sausage fest, right?
No,
one
you
more
can't
thing.
use that word anymore.
No, I can't use
There's
At
one
least
more.
woken up, no.
There's one more thing that I have started doing
Yes.
past few years. You know, when we wrote scripts earlier, all your important characters would be upper caste. Your heroes would be upper caste. Your character actors would be upper caste. So now sometimes it is inconsequential which caste they come from. But
You just give it a last name.
but I make sure that it is, so just a surname which may be said thrice in the film or maybe 5 times in the film. But I tell all my co-writers or writers to be mindful of that.
I mean, since we're talking about how things used to be back in the day, All of you have been in films for longer than at least 20 years, right? And I'm just wondering, if you decided to become directors now, how different would that world have been? Would you have started out the same way? Vikram, I guess you could have. You would have still been with Sanjay Leela Bhansali, still making the same kind of movies, so you could have been part of it.
I think what's changed though is, all of us, I think, got our break by making an indie movie. And that's where we sort of started off. That world has changed. I don't think the indie film in the theater exists as it was 10, 15 years ago. So the question here is that where would we get our break today? How would the world see our work? In the series world, would it be a situation where you've gone and created something? Are you a director for episodic content? If you do make a film, where does that film get seen? Where does it get, or do you then sort of assist someone and then end up becoming a bit of a shadow of them, of that same person? It's not that when I became a filmmaker, it wasn't that wasn't there. Yes, and in that moment, in fact, everybody's like, oh, you should do a rom-com. That's the best way to get a film made, because you'll get a star and you'll get a producer. You stick to your guns because there was still an option to say in the turn by 2010 that, okay, there's theaters out there that are willing to take a movie like, or a UTV is willing to distribute an Udaan to be able to sort of like take it to the movies. And that's the same case for me, for anyone here, for Anurag, for Dibakar, for, you know. But I'm just wondering today, and this is the question, it's not even, I just feel today that opportunity, you have to say, okay, who are the new directors that I've seen today that are exciting? That number has come down tremendously. The exciting directors are not, their films are not being seen. So whether it's a Karan Gaur who's made Fairy Folk, or whether it's a Natesh Hegde who's made Pedro, they're phenomenal directors, but their work's not being seen. So how does one, so either you're like Raj and DK who are producing something for a director to go out there and sort of like do that, or I do a series where then a certain amount of directors come and work with you. But where else would you end up seeing that? So I think that's the difference for me from 15 years ago to right now, is again, is opportunity.
Right. Anand sir, I mean, you started with television, if I'm not mistaken, and if you were starting out in 2024, where would you?
No, Mayank, I don't think anything would have changed. Maybe being a student of cinema, you understand the present generation or the present audience. I remember when I saw Udaan then, it was mind-blowing. I attended his success party also. And today also, if somebody comes and makes something like Udaan, I think it will work. I'll see it on a OTT platform. Yeah. It's you get your appreciation. The point is that we are talking about the directors.
Yes.
My thing is that talent will never go unnoticed. That's what I feel.
Sure.
You know. So for me, it is.
This is more for the young people I saw in the audience, and we sort of know your journey. If you were to take that same call right now, as they would be, where would they start from?
So like. Udaan was which
Udaan
year?
was 2010, if I'm not mistaken.
2010. And in 2018, there was Newton.
Right.
Again a very gutsy film, and it did its business. So my point is not about coming to theaters or coming on OTT. I'm talking about the talent. I think that's very important to nurture what he said, giving chance to new directors and the talent. So,
Anubhav, would you agree?
No. I think if I don't know about, can't speak about the rest of them, but I think if people from that generation that we come from, if they started today, they will be more pliable directors. More pliable directors. Because when we started, so I was remembering my first film, Tumbin. So some people thought that the first half was slow, some people thought the second half was slow. But I was never thrown choices at me. People came and saw the film and they said whatever they had to say. And then I was in the middle of the ocean, trying to figure this response. I'm talking about pre-release.
Right.
And then I did whatever I had to do. Then it became successful. And then it happened to me several times. So during those days, the call rested with the director. And It still does to an extent. At least there's a pretense for it. But so we have climbed those mountains on our own. So we have the confidence that, no, this is right. We trust our instincts more than we trust the data that's thrown at you day in and day out. Some meaningless data.
Test screenings and stuff like that.
Testings and people, and now the distributor also knows about the pacing of a film, and everybody knows everything about the film. But that's not the case. Nobody knows anything about the film. It's such a young art. It's still developing. And I think the flight of the director is terribly curtailed today. And it is like the American...
Today as against in the past, you're saying?
Yes.
This is the worst time to be a director?
Yeah, well,
than
of course. Wow. When we worked with those independent producers, they would have this gut feeling about you. It is like the House of Medici or... yeah, they say, Anubhav, picture na. This is how I got my first film. I was directing music videos for Bhushan, and Bhushan called me and said, picture क्यों नहीं बनाते? तो मैंने कहा वही बनाने तो आया था. बनाओ. कहानी है? हाँ है. चलो कल खाना खाते हैं. अगले दिन खाना खाया, 5 मिनट में कहानी सुनाई, पिक्चर बनानी शुरू हो गई. So, money used to earlier foster art. And today that relationship is extremely lopsided. So money has all the power. And the famous going game is the algorithm, which to me is a cage. And let me explain. I'm sorry if I'm talking too much. Stop
No,
me.
please.
Algorithm is a cage. It is a tool of the illiterate.
I heard alcoholism first, by the way. So, which is also a cage, I'm sure.
So, I grew up in a house where my father used to play Begum Akhtar all the time. So, to begin with, it was boring. Who is she? What is that voice? And what is she saying? I didn't know that Urdu. There was no Google. Then I got used to her, and then I fell in love with her. Now, if there was an algorithm at play, now it will eventually take me to other ghazal singer, other Urdu poet, whatever. But I met a friend called Nayyar Zaidi who took me to Bob Dylan. So, and I fell in love with Bob Dylan. This is how art is supposed to expand and spread and fly. But if you tell me, Anubhav, this is how the audience is behaving, and this is what they are going for, and first 10 minutes people leave the show and whatnot, then it not only intimidates your instinct, it potentially kills your instinct. And then you think, oh fuck, oh sorry, oh shit, this is data. But data is an art. And how do I know you understand the art of data analysis? You don't. You clearly don't, because if people knew the art of data analysis, all the shows and all the movies will be hits. And then one breakout movie comes out and becomes a hit. So let's say 12th Fail, recent example. It is called an aberration. But when an action film becomes a hit, it is a trend. And I fail to understand why. Best explanation that I have is that they don't understand why, so they create this data and they
Right.
they bulwark with it.
Right.
ये मजाक उड़ा रहे तारीफ कर रहे हैं.
नहीं sir.
So today's director, when he walks into this multi-billion-dollar office and faced by
He gets
executives,
intimidated and
is-
therefore will be
is
pliable.
terribly
Okay, that's
so you become more pliable without your
right.
knowing about it. Sorry, I spoke a
No,
lot.
not at all. Please, that's the whole point of the conversation we're having. Rajikesh, I mean, one, do you have a response here on this particular aspect of entering a
See,
glass
that was a very
building?
wise answer that was applauded in the rightful way. My perspective is slightly different.
Okay.
It's there's nothing wrong with what he said. That's what the journey is. That's what the experience is. That's what I'm hearing. I just feel filmmaking, if you think of it in a broad sense, and it's not theatrical, not just OTT. You have YouTube, you have shorts, you have all kinds of cinema you can make. If you can see yourself emancipated from everything, just as a filmmaker, I have a story to tell and I have an iPhone, I have a Samsung, I have Oppo, whatever it is, I have a 2K camera. My point is, you can just make a film. Be seen the way exactly you want to make a film. So there are no trappings. You know, if you see it that way, You know,
If you see it
sometimes
that way,
if
right.
you have to see it, you see yourself that you're not trapped by all the trappings, and this is how they're wanting me to make, which is where we are all stuck at. That I understand. We've reached a place where we are fighting dark forces. But as a filmmaker, if you just snap out of it and we retrieve from everything, there is a way to make the movie you want to make. So for the young filmmakers I'm talking about, this is the time to just express yourself. You have so many ways to do it. Later we'll end up in a position where Anubhav and we are all at, and then, you know, come to that point in life.
So the point that I was trying to make is that this is not our fight. See, the problem is that film is a business and it's also an art.
Right.
I'm sorry, but I keep giving examples of food because I'm a food lover. If you think McDonald's makes burgers, you're mistaken. Burger was an art, which was merchandised into this huge conglomerate. So people who've not had the real burger, they think McDonald's makes burgers. So the present system of the money's dominance over art is trying to make burgers. And if you continue to make burgers in a merchandised form, you lose the art. Because that is not being allowed enough oxygen. Because that is being stifled with data and executive decisions and whatnot. And this isn't how the money and art relationship is supposed to be. Money is always, every king from the 13th century, 12th century, go back how many centuries, every time there was a king, he supported art.
Oh, we still have those kings. They could be corporate houses. They could
Yeah,
be
but Yanis Varoufakis
the house of the
says-
Ambanis, etc., etc.
You know, Yanis Varoufakis very famously says that the extreme of capitalism is imperialism, and we are almost there.
I think coming back to, well, of course, we are in the commerce side of the conversation. And I think one of the things that Aanand sir mentioned is the fact that he saw a film like Newton in 2018 in a theater. It did really well. In fact, until 2019, you see a lot of these medium budget films doing exceedingly well in the theaters. I mean, low budget movies were never a thing. They were always wiped out of the cinemas in any case. Then the pandemic happens. Do you think that medium budget movie, like say an Ayushmann Khurrana film or a Rajkumar Rao movie that was doing 100 crore plus number, that's been wiped out now and completely taken over by what are only spectacle and blast fests. Is that something that you think about as directors when you think of what story to make if it is going to be a theatrical? Do you think the medium budget has been badly affected when it comes to cinema post-pandemic?
No, again-
or is this just a phase?
No, it's just a phase.
Okay.
And I have a reason. It's for us to understand, as makers, as directors, as storytellers, it's for us to understand that it's the changing audience. Every decade you will find a change. You will find either a maker is getting evolved or the audience is getting evolved. You have to get in sync. Either you have to get in sync with audience and get them evolved, or the other way around. But this pandemic, I feel that COVID time gave us a jump, you know, a gap,
Right.
where we were disconnected with the real audience.
What
We
is
were-
the real audience?
For me, like if
Yes.
you ask me, at the time of pandemic, before pandemic, I was making one film which had to go on an OTT platform. Along with this, I was producing two more. I had no other way around but to go to,
Right, Atrangire, that's the film that you
Yes.
went straight to.
though I personally felt that there was an emotional gap between, or a disconnect between my theater going audience and me, which I had before. And I'm not talking about success or failure. It's about getting something from them.
There's something you want to say and there's something they're not able to get. Is that what you're saying? That's the gap.
So say if at an average every 2 years or 2.5 years, I make a film. But because of that pandemic, that gap got into a 5-year gap.
Right.
So that disconnect and the changing audience, I was unable to catch the pulse, or how to say, even if their rejection taught me something. So there was no rejection, no acceptance. I never came to know. So there was this definite disconnect, which I personally feel as a director I suffered. You know, in today's time, if you ask me, these are the times to go ahead again jump into those medium size. But you have to keep this present audience in your mind. Tell them a story which is relatable. You have to understand this Gen Z audience. जो पिछले 10 साल में हम लोगों ने छोड़ा है. That's what I feel for that medium budget.
I think the other thing that's happened in the past 7-8 years is, of course, the advent of the OTT and what it's done to at least 4 people on this. I don't think you made a series yet, Aanand sir.
No.
But all of you have made. In fact, you made 2 last year, right? That's like 10 hours of content almost. You've just finished making one. You had Jubilee this year. When you are turning from a film director to a series director, from a logistics point of view, but more so from the writing point of view, how do things change? Because this is also a completely new medium. In another world, it's the TV guys who would have jumped into this because it's closer to television. It's more TV than films. But it's actually the film guys who started making series. One, how did that happen? And why did that happen? And how did it change your life in terms of looking at your craft differently?
Okay. So yeah, see, that was always expected. Like we were, like Raj and I, we were toying with the idea of making a series even before the biggies, Amazon and Netflix, came to India, but we didn't know how to go about doing it. We were just hoping one day, like an HBO would come and we would get to make it. And as it turned out, Amazon and Netflix came. So we were literally almost one of the first people to jump onto that, that format. And we started, while we were busy making movies, we started developing our first screenplay for a series. The reason we wanted to do it was precisely this reason, right? Like, I wouldn't call it TV, even though you're watching it on TV. Television was done, there is an entire ecosystem of television production, makers, audience. That is not the audience for OTT series. The audience
and that is not the industry either. TV industry is a completely different industry, at least in India even now.
Yeah, so now it's a movie
not so
audience.
Much. We'll get to that.
Yeah, movie audience, movie production values, movie scripts. Like, you have a script that is probably too long for a movie, that's what is going to make a series. You have a canvas that can survive more than 2 hours on a screen, is what becomes a series. So that's where we started off. And so for us, it was creatively liberating. When we started Family Man, suddenly we felt like you can really, really explore the world, the plot, the character, and not worry about, I mean, you still have to worry at some point about, oh my God, it's 10 episodes, I cannot go more.
Right.
But you don't have to worry about the 2 hour or 2.5 hour time limit. So
yeah,
the
main point is the freeing part of it. I was feeling stifled by the format. Oh, stop talking.
No, it's okay.
Yeah, it was freeing because we were really getting stifled a bit. Because, like I said, independent filmmakers wanting to make something unique, not wanting to make what is out there.
So stifled in what sense? You've been stifled in
the
terms of running time?
format of the theatrical feature film format, where you required, let us say, the simplest one would be song and dance, an interval point, a big star, the one that will get openings, where you'll have to cater to the image, and then what will bring you the Friday numbers, because your movie's dead on Friday. First show is all you get. There is no, you are more and more, we felt at least, that it had to get superficial for the story. It has to become more about packaging for people to be attracted to theaters, because there was no time given for a movie to breathe. So it's the packaging. You see the trailer, you see the faces, you see the music, and I want to go for it, or not, you're screwed. Some movies get, lucky, and you get some breathing space, and then you discover and say, what a film, all this. So hence, the series suddenly felt like we were genuine filmmakers once again, where we could tell stories the way they should be told.
Became pure storytelling. Became a pure storytelling as opposed to packaging. And now today, after all these years, right? I mean, there's great merits in both formats. We can't wait to go and make our next film out there and put it in a theater, and we are trying to do that. But that said, right now I could point a few films that I like worldwide that I think would have done better if would have been a better experience for me, at least, if it had been a series. For example, Napoleon, that came out as a film, or there was a film called House of Gucci. These are stories I felt are being let down by being a film.
Is the reverse true as well, that you see some things that are being stretched into series where they could really have been films, or maybe they were really films and just pulled
Exactly.
to
yeah,
hit
yeah. There are,
8
there,
hours
yeah, there
because
are
you're
pitfalls
supposed to
on
be.
both sides. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anubhav, for you, this was the one that you just currently shot. That's the IC 814 hijack drama. That's your first web series, if I'm not mistaken, as a director. How was that different from all the films that you've done in all these years?
No, so I have done a show before this, not for web, but
Television, yes.
television. It
Right.
was Seahawks I did in
Right.
95, 96. So it's fairly similar.
Okay.
You have more resources at hand. And so I don't think that part of it changes. It's telling the story and it's a slightly different format. In film, you have a captive audience that will come into the theater and you'll turn off the lights and you'll control the entire experience. When you go to their homes, that's not the case. You're not controlling the entire experience. They are cooking or they are fighting or they are loving, hopefully, and they're watching the show. So it's different in that sense. But otherwise, as a storyteller, the idea of engagement, the idea of touching them remains the
With
same.
more characters and just more time to sort of
No, you know,
flesh out the story?
films can have more characters. Television had an interesting format which web series doesn't have. I don't know if it's more interesting. I'm saying interesting. Okay.
Guys, is that really an alarm? Is the place on fire? Do we know this for sure? Sorry, yeah.
On television, what happened was you saw an episode and you had to wait another week to
Yes.
watch the second episode. So that the telling had to be different. Now all the episodes, more often than not, they come together. Now it's your choice whether you want to see it tomorrow or the next Thursday or whenever or all at once. So that is the only difference in terms of where you end the episode engaging in
I'm sure that's from the audience's perspective. When you are sitting down to write the show, to shoot the show, how does that change for you?
nothing. That's all you are looking after. That I want them to binge my entire show.
Okay.
So it ends and you...
It ends at a hook.
And no, you cannot say, oh, wow, what a show, I'll watch it tomorrow, the next episode. You should not have that time. You should just go to the next one right there.
So you'll write it in that
So you write it like that. So that design changes, but that's only about the beginning and end. Otherwise, then it becomes a 45-minute film, which must leave you asking for more.
Vikram, with Jubilee and all the films that you've done, especially when it comes to, like, say, a beginning, middle, and end, most screenwriters are used to a particular format, which is a midpoint in terms of a second act, third act, and the first. There is the second act that just can carry on forever, right? How do you change that when it comes to directing and also writing?
I think as to what Anubhav also said is the fact that you wanted to be left, every episode to be left to a place where, okay, next. So the way we've broken down, whether it's Sacred Games or Jubilee, or the fact is that, yes, there is a larger structure to your entire season arc, but then every episode itself also has a beginning, middle, and ending. So you have a beginning, middle, and ending for one episode. You're making a film within a much larger film, within a much larger film. You know, I think the very, very primary difference, if you have to look at it, and it's not, again, no rules to it, is that movies are stories. Movies are about stories or about plots, and series are about people. The difference is, if you take all the greatest series that we've seen internationally, whether it's Game of Thrones or whether it's Breaking Bad or any of these things, you're there for the people. You're there for the characters.
Right.
You're there. That's what you're there for, because it's you form a relationship with these people, and you watch 10 hours of their life, and you're back the next year and the next year and the next year to keep watching more and more things kind of about them. This is a very basic, broad kind of difference, which is the reason also, for some reason, that the entire Marvel universe works, because it's actually a very, very large series within those small films. So in the end of the day...
So each film is actually an episode that they put out.
Each film is actually an episode that... So you started with, Iron Man in 2008, and you're culminating with him in 2019, but it's an 11-year journey that you spent with this character and other multiple characters. And,
Interesting.
so you tend to sort of see it, you tend to see it that way, but the writing... Once you're a fan of I think the reason I, at least, is that got into or was excited about the series format in the first place is that even before Netflix and Amazon came in, we were already watching them. You were already watching House of Cards and anything, whether Breaking Bad, so many great shows. We were watching it, you know, and The Sopranos and anything. So you were already a fan. Your water cooler conversations were not movies anymore. They were series. Have you seen the latest episode of blah, blah, blah?
Right.
So automatically you were interested in the format. And then when the opportunity came, and I think the outreach from the streamers was to reach out not to TV people, but to reach out to movie people. Because this wasn't television. This was about cinematic series storytelling.
Also, India hadn't had a HBO moment. I mean,
Exactly.
they had it in '99. We're still making network
So
television.
we jumped in because we're like, this is great. This is exactly what I'm watching, and it's also what I want to do. So, and we figured it out along the way. The writing process is not that difficult to figure out. You figure it out.
I mean, you're saying, in effect, that with a series as against a film, there is a proper film with each episode that you're putting out, which also has its own title, which has its own characters, and then it has a beginning, middle, end, and you start all over again.
Yep.
That sounds like a lot of work.
It is.
Is it a lot of work compared to all the films that you guys have done? I mean, obviously the labor-intensive part of it. You're obviously shooting way more, but you're also writing way more. You're also keeping a lot of things in mind. Would that be correct to say?
It is a lot of work. You know, it is into 5, into 6 times making a feature film for sure. Also, when we started, we realized we didn't want to do those longish series where you have. I started dissecting other series that were out there, and I could see that they really use 4 locations in a series, even in a Homeland or anything. They keep intercutting between them so that you can have a director for each episode, or maybe to finish the episode. I'm not sure. I just didn't care much for it because we were jumping, like I said.
You were jumping locations like how? You've been jumping, like you could, like every scene could be like another part of India, right?
Yeah, I mean,
in all the shows you've done.
Because we wanted to shoot it like a feature film.
Right.
Anything we shot, because we are filmmakers, feature filmmakers.
Right.
We wanted to do it like a feature film, speed, edit, don't have to lengthen a scene just to Is
that really signal?
Yeah, I think we should.
That's really rude, guys. I had like at least 5 more questions.
I
Should
think
I
they're
ask those
trying-
5 questions or not? Tell me the odd. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, carry on.
Yeah, so
No, I won't ask 5. Chill.
what was the question?
No, I see your point. I think since we're coming to the last point that we have to address, of course, because we have addressed commerce and certainly some elements of art. The third that remains is technology, and clearly that's changed over the years. Aanand sir, since you've been around, I'm presuming you're the oldest in this lot. Digital, we've gone from film to digital, VFX. We're looking at AI right now. Have you been using AI in filmmaking yet? Have you used any of the new technologies that we keep hearing about? But is it there in your? Are you storyboarding with AI?
Yes, I can say that a few years back, 2 years back, it was like a threat. Now I haven't used it. I think, but we are on the verge. Like
Okay.
as I said, as a student, you keep on learning as a student of cinema, and we can't shy away from it, and it will become part of our life very soon, and we have to bind our stories accordingly, you know. So
is there anything you guys have used in terms of technology that's really blown you over? It's made your life easier, whether it's AI or anything to do with digital or even VFX?
No, I think there's been I haven't personally.
Yeah.
But I am sort of kind of like I am a little anti-AI in terms of, especially when you're using it for the creative purpose. I understand the idea of using AI to be able to better your, or to finesse certain kind of things. So I've been keeping my hands off it. I've tried it, and I'm like, I'm hands off. So I'm actually the wrong person to answer that question. If anybody else wants.
No, I'm ashamed
We
to
are
say.
using a bit of AI. Just started it.
Your next script is by
No,
ChatGPT?
Yeah, no, it would
You
have
should
been
let us
easy,
know.
right? I wouldn't let. Imagine replacing actors, get them all faces, and say we don't need to wait for dates. We just sit and make our own animated film with AI, with the faces of actors. But we are using it for character sketches lately.
Right.
And it is pretty impressive.
Yeah.
It's scarily impressive because we keep looking for graphic artists, and then you're telling them and you're trying the different people, you don't get it. But here it's just you and the app or your program, and we are able to fine tune to the earrings, the kind of shape we want, the kind of color we want. So
that's the look you're talking about,
the look,
the modeling of the.
Yeah, there's a visual part
No,
of it,
about
not the
the
chat GPT part of it.
character sketches. So
Right.
our next show, we're actually building each one painstakingly, a really detailed character face. But having said that, it's pretty scary what's coming up.
Why don't you just guys
but
just
that's
hire
what
a
make-
graphic artist? Why don't you just hire a graphic artist?
We did. I think it's just that, convenience of sitting at night and trying it over and over and over, trying to get it. It's like almost holding a graphic artist's hand and trying to say, draw it, which is not so respectful, or you might not get it. And here you're trying to see, maybe sometimes you see some more nuances that, the way it drew, you're liking it. And there are 10 different ways of doing it. So I see that. I mean, we are trying, and it's not easy to get I don't know, I'm always looking for graphic artists, and I never seem to get the best of him.
But even if we don't look at AI per se, but even digital for that matter, I'm pretty sure when you started out, you were, with all of you in fact, you were filming, right? You were using film. To the fact that you can just keep the camera rolling forever, has filmmaking per se become easier as a process than it was before? And it could be a process from commerce, because it could technically be cheaper, but it's also technology, because there's so much you can achieve that you couldn't before.
So yeah, the scope of what you can achieve has improved, and it will keep on improving. But I want to say something about the AI, though I would never use AI in the final product, because it amounts to plagiarism largely. But yes, I would look for the graphic artist. I do. I still haven't used AI like more than 0.0032%, but yes, I have sometimes. So it has become easier, but the scope of your achievement has improved, but it has not become easier at all, and it's not like you can keep running the camera all the time, because there are repercussions to that as well. And there were directors, I remember at the time when I saw like Raj Kumar Santoshi Saab would shoot like digital on film. Shashilal Nair would shoot.
He didn't care about raw stock.
No.
Right.
I have seen him do 36 takes of a shot, and then he moved the camera a foot and started from one again. I was in the room, and one very iconic shot. And no wonder he was trying so hard. But, that is the fun of making films. No, so like I always, people think I have an ego problem when I have a problem with shooting something again. No, it's not that. It's a part of the process that you forgot a close-up. Now, how do you make it work?
Right.
So there lies the fun of making movies.
So the obstacle becomes the process.
Yeah, that becomes
Right.
a process
The road,
and
right.
achievement. So it's becoming different. The scope of achievement is changing quite dramatically. Like there are shots that I did without a green screen, and there's hair and there's no problem. I can't recognize my own shot. In Ravan, that won't happen. You needed a green screen. The technology wasn't there. So it's changing, and you can see it on screen, the kind of films that are being made in India and abroad, that the spectacle is... But at the same time, you watch Oppenheimer, which is largely organic. It is also as exciting as any other film with visual effects.
And it has to be said that as technology has changed, what hasn't changed is the great films that we've watched over years. They still remain the great films. I'm going to end this conversation with asking you, if you at gunpoint, if you were told, or if you were in a deserted island, and you could only watch one director's works, you could only pick one person's entire filmography to sit and watch. It's like if you can, since you're a foodie, there's one thing you could eat all your life. A lot of people say rajma chawal, which is disgusting. I don't know why I say that. But it could be Maggie for some people. If there's one filmmaker, which filmmaker would it be?
See, I don't know how many...
And we have to make this quick because the chairman is going to be here. So
Who's going to be here?
there is the next session that needs to start.
Okay.
I've just been told. Yeah.
So I don't know how many...
One director.
I don't know how many of you have been pulled a gun at. I have been.
Okay.
And I didn't comply.
Was the gun loaded or not? Then what is the point of that gun? You're still alive sitting here.
No, I didn't comply. There was a gun to my, you know, all you see is inside of the barrel. You are trying to see the bullet, and you don't. And I didn't comply.
So you assume the other person was a law-abiding citizen.
So I'm not complying to your question today.
Okay, start.
Like one director?
One director.
That's all I'm
Basically,
allowed.
what I'm asking is, who's your favorite director if you had to choose one?
No, it may not necessarily
And
be
it need not be Indian, it need not be, I mean, it could be international, it could be anywhere.
No, it's not about being the favorite director, but if I just imagined a world where I can only watch one director's films, so I should at least choose a director who's made a few films, not one or two, so
Yes.
that
Yeah, it has to be
at
long
least
film.
I
You have enough time to live.
yeah, at least I keep my life occupied.
Yeah.
So if I have to name one, I think I would name Spielberg
Spielberg.
because of the
There you
variety
go.
of work over decades.
Right.
So at least it'll keep me occupied. I
And
think.
that range, right?
Yeah.
He went for the smart answer, but if I had to pick one, I'd pick David Fincher.
See, you'll watch the 6 films and then you're done.
I know. I'll go with 6 films. Then I'll write my own stories after that.
Anand sir, since you've chosen not to answer this question,
So my favorite, all-time favorite, from whom I learn a lot by watching his films is Raj Kapoor.
I would pick Ray.
you pick Satyajit Ray. And I really hope into the future, after all your filmography is done, all these people pick your films as well as to watch forever. Thank you so much for this session, guys.
Thank you, gentlemen. Before you leave the stage, can we have a photo with all the directors in the front stage over here? Thank you, gentlemen. And thank you, Mayank. बहुत सारे पंजाबी लोग कह रहे होंगे कि राजमा चावल को बुरा क्यों बोला?
Ladies and gentlemen, please settle down as we move on to the next fireside chat.
Ladies and gentlemen, the next session commences immediately after this. It's a fireside chat with it's going to be quite interesting, so just hold on.